Dawn, you got to unmute yourself.
Is that me unmuted?
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, that's the bit that stands out for me. And yeah, so the boundary between inner and outer is gone, and the sense of location is gone and has never returned here. I mean, that can return in some cases, so it hasn't returned in this case, in my case. So yeah, I think that's all I want to say, really. It's not, which isn't very much, but yeah.
Okay. Well, if anyone has a question, just raise your hand virtually and you can ask your question. I'm going to check in with YouTube. If anyone's there. Oops. Oh, Joe has a question.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi.
I can't see you.
Hello, Dawn Walter. I've spoken before on in this group chat. So I want to ask the question, Dawn. Didn't hear everything you said because you were muted, but last bit. So I'm sorry, you might have to repeat some of it. But the last bit you just said, you said something like it returns to some, but it hasn't to me. You know, this inner outer thing that doesn't exist anymore with you. But then you said it's returned for some, but not for me. Can you expand on that? What do you mean? Because I think this is something I asked a couple of months ago.
Some I've heard, I'm not revealing anyone, but I've heard some people say that the sense of being here like returns, or the sense of like substance to the body or weight, or, you know, because it feels like pure spirit here. Like it doesn't actually, I mean, it's obviously there's an awareness of the body, the weight of the body, et cetera, but I'm not, you know, it just feels like lightness, total, like there's nothing here. That's the way it feels. That's as honest as I can put it. It's and it's continued like that, and I don't think it always does. You know, maybe it's a radical dissociation. I don't think it is, but so in your case, it hasn't either. It hasn't returned. I mean, has it?
Yeah, that was the question I asked, wasn't it, really? Because I was talking about, I mean, we're using words here, and I know it's impossible because we're almost using different terminology sometimes, but yeah, I think I said something about returning to the egoic mind almost, you know. We can easily do that.
Yeah, that can
although
happen.
it is quite strong at the beginning, isn't it, as you said, and you've described that as well. But actually, since we spoke a couple of months ago, I have, when I was going to ask you, do you meditate? Do you do meditations to kind of, you know, keep you? I know it's always there, Dawn. I know it's underlying and it's always there. It doesn't go, as you say.
Yeah. That's where there's a kind of, I think people are afraid to talk about meditation in relation to this. But yeah, I do. I just do for the sake of health, really, and
yes,
you know, self-care. You know, but not as regularly as I did at the minute. But yeah, what's your question around that? I mean,
well, I mean, I'm just curious because where I was a couple of months ago was I wasn't doing any meditations. I wasn't particularly resonating with anything. And, you know, I've said before, I was just experiencing what I experienced, and I was, you know, living life. My challenges came up and I was, you know, going through my challenges in a very kind of, you know, mindful, different kind of consciousness way, and, you know, through the heart kind of way as well. But still difficult, but, you know, working through life's challenges. And what I've realized in the last couple of months is actually, I've had a big challenge over the summer, and I kind of thought, okay, right, we got to pull it all in here. This is going to be a big one. And what I've realized is that I can actually, I've always gone into solitude. I've always gone into quietness, quietening within. I've always done that, but I kind of really, I found some nice meditations that worked for me, which is what was missing. I still don't do them all the time. It's not like, oh yeah, you know, an hour in the morning, none of that. But I've realized that even a few minutes of listening to the kind of, it's all about the beingness. It's all about being, you know, the truth of who we are. The meditations are really talking about oneness, talking about non-duality, talking about us just being, because this is, you know, this is our natural state. And all of those have just small ones, but they resonated with me. And I have actually realized that, yeah, it's kind of taken me, it's given me more, how can I put it? It's just made me more grounded again within myself.
Awesome. It's good to hear you say that as well, because I think a lot of people, you know, after awakening do meditate, but they don't speak about it because it's that, you know, this is meditation already. What do you need to do that for? And,
yes.
you know, and sometimes you can have really blissful ecstatic states in that, and it can be incredibly grounding, like you say, and,
yes.
and so many other things as well. So, you know, it's like bringing that out of the closet, really, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. It can ground you.
I think so. It just because the thing is, when this, you know, this group is about integrating, and when we're integrating whatever experience of awakening non-duality that we've had, integrating that into life is difficult. And you know, life carries on. We can't just walk away and go and live on some mountain and, you know, just have a blissful life. It's just not possible. And so what I've found is that obviously we are kind of, you know, thrown about a little bit with whatever challenges life brings in. And so this summer, what I've realized is, okay, this is it's all good. I've found something that is grounding me more and keeping me, you know, in that place that I kind of that we all reside in, really. But yeah.
And
I was just curious. Yeah.
Sometimes, like, you know, something like that works for a while and then kind of it doesn't, and then, do you know what I mean? Like it shift and change as well, how you respond to something. So I don't know, I find that too. It's like, you know, you don't have to kind of continue with one kind of way of doing things. I mean, I do have my meditation is with a Hare Krishna mantra. I think I've mentioned that before. So it's just
exactly. To be honest with you, even for me, even finding the right music or the right song or something that resonates with me can pull me, you know, back. It's just Anyway, thank you for that.
Yeah, spontaneous. I guess sometimes get spontaneous music and no mind states, or seems to pull me into no mind states. That sort of, which is nice.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So you can type your question in YouTube chat if you're watching on YouTube. Or if you're in the Zoom, you can just jump right in. Amar raised his hand.
Hi there. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, it's actually my first time joining. I saw this on a meetups group and I thought it looks quite good. And I was just, maybe I should ask a little bit more about what this group is about. Apologies that for the first 5 minutes or so, my connection was a bit flaky and I for some reason got kicked out as well. So I didn't hear all of it, but from what I understand, you know, this is a non-dual discussion on non-dualism. Are there any specific philosophies or Dawn, I know you mentioned about the Hare Krishna mantra, but and you know, there's a big philosophy around the whole movement. I don't know if there's anything along those lines or any, you know, even outside of those lines. What I see, like, you're smiling there. I don't know if I'm on the right track here.
Oh no, I just mentioned that because I use it as a mantra for meditation. No more than that.
Right.
I'm not, you know. you know, I'm not into
Yeah.
the Hare Krishna. I do have a copy of the Gita, but like it's not nothing to do with this. But
I mean, the Gita in itself is quite a big philosophy in itself. But I was curious, as you know, you know, far outside of that, there are so many different philosophies, etc. I mean, when it comes down to non-dualism, and I was just curious, for this specific group being my first time, what is it quite fluid, or you know, are we looking at specific types or categories of philosophies around non-dualism, or maybe it's quite an open general question, but what is this group more entailing towards?
one more this is group.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
No, it's just Walter,
Sorry, you want me to take it? I know, well, he mentioned your name, so I thought you were going to answer first, just because of asking about the Hare Krishna and all that.
That was just mentioned.
Yeah.
But...
Oh, right. Well, basically, I'd say non-duality. It's not really a philosophy. It's not a message, even. It's because it's not speaking to anyone. It's not suggesting there is anyone or anything to be pointed to or something to do the pointing. You know, it's just that there's no separation. There's no separate existence. There's no separate individual running his or her life. There's no volition. There's just what's appearing. And I'd say the essence of non-dual, it's not two. So there isn't a creator and a created. There isn't God. There isn't, you know, people, places, and things. There's just this mysterious appearance that in this life that seems to be being lived. But, you know, it seems clear that there's no one living a life, that no one's doing anything. Everything's just apparently happening. But I'd say that's, as far as this meeting, you know, there's also other elements, you know, as far as integration and Kundalini and different topics we get into, but I'd say the heart of non-duality is that.
Yeah, I mean, the meeting is kind of a permission for people to bring anything, like psychological issues around it, energetic experiences, whatever the hell's going on for them. It's like,
okay. Yeah, because from what I sense there, Walter, is that, you know, it's going down the route of what some might say as maybe like voidism to some degree. You know, that everything there's just all there is this whole existence is just one big void, which I suppose it can kind of almost be interpreted as if, well, if everything's void, then everything is also whole, that everything is, and you know, so therefore everything is all inclusive. So it you know, it can be looked at from both spectrums, really. I suppose both of them are really just two sides to the same coin. So it's just knowing as to what approach there is. You know, you just wear different lenses and see them. It's really just multi-dimensional, really. But it's right. So it's either everything's nothing or everything is everything, and it doesn't seem to be any in between, which is fine. That's what non-dualism is, really. But it was just a case of knowing. I'm glad that Dawn, you know, you mentioned like what people's experiences are, but that's my personal experience. And and it comes into play with, as you mentioned, about a mantra. If there's some sort of a mantra there, then that allows us that vision to kind of see that as what Walter mentions, that everything is just an appearance, that everything's just appearance as name or form.
I wish I had mentioned the mantra now. it's just confusing.
No, at the end of the day, like I get why mantras are there to serve a purpose, right? But one
not
of the
for me. I'm not using it like it's just something that, just during a meditation, it's something I do for a point of focus. So it's it's not for an end, like it's not to produce something that I mean, that's not the way I'm using it. It's really got nothing to do with this. It's not a
right
path. I mean, that's what I mean. It could have been anything. I think U.G. Krishnamurti said you could say Coca-Cola, as a mantra. It could be anything, but I just fell in love with it.
Yeah, but ultimately, I think, again, this is my personal experience. I mean, us as every being, be human or other, ultimately is finite, not just in our body, but not just our bodily aspect, but actually our senses, our minds. That ultimately we are ultimately finite.
We don't know that. That's unknowable. How do you know you're finite?
Well, then we're going down the path of knowing. There's things that I know. There's things that I know that I don't know, and there's things that there's like 4 combinations. There's things that I don't know that I don't know. Then we can go on. Talking about that forever. But ultimately, there are still going to be things that we don't know, which therefore makes us finite. So for that reason, if we knew everything, then these sort of discussions simply wouldn't have to take place. Everyone already knows things.
Well, I mean, certainty is the experience of certain individuals who do experience like a near-death experience, for instance. There will be certainty, coming back.
But death is just
that life. I don't have access to that, even though I've had trans-dimensional experiences. I do not have certainty, but
but again, that's quite subjective. I guess that's subjective. But ultimately, what I'm saying is that ultimately we are, as human beings, taking it from the absolute basic level of us to the most extreme level of I don't know, the higher realms of consciousness, or whatever we're going to call it. Ultimately, everything is, us. We are human beings. We still have that finite around us. So therefore, to experience non-duality, which is an absolute of everything, that is infinite. But us as human beings, we are finite. So things like, I'm not promoting it, but things like meditations or whatever they could be, give us the sort of tools. We don't stick with those because they're just tools in a day, to be able to tap into those realms of understanding the attributeless non-duality. Really, those are the tools that we can use, I suppose, to some degree. I mean, I'm talking from experience. This is personal for me, and hence I don't know if that anyone agrees on that, or if that's been sort of the same or similar experiences for anyone. But I've seen glimpses of that non-dual state through using different meditations or as such, or not just meditation, but various different means.
I just don't think you can universalize that,
No, you can't. No, like I said, it's very subjective. It's
well,
very,
I mean,
very
I don't mean like that. I mean, a lot of people have meditations and won't experience that. It's not just because you are, which is beautiful. It's great, but it doesn't always go like that.
No, there's no one size fits all. No. Like I said, meditation. Don't just jump on that. Like I won't jump on just mantras or anything like that. But yeah, there's no one size fits all by any means. I'm not making that apparent, but yeah, ultimately we are finite beings, and I suppose to tap into something which is ultimately infinite, that takes some effort on our part, I guess, to some degree, not just a level of understanding.
Not necessarily. Very often not. I mean, very often this can happen out of the blue as well. So there aren't any conditions for this, you know.
Yeah, but it certainly needs some kind of practice or some sort of regularity involved in it.
I would say not necessarily.
Oh, okay. I'll be interested to know what that is then. Okay, well, I won't talk anymore.
No, talk away. But just saying that's you know, like from people I've spoken to, and you know, it's not, it, you know, very often happens out of the blue, and it, you know, the seeing is you can't, you know, there's no one to bring this about because, you know, that's, it's.
I think there is a level of that, but then I suppose then it comes down also down to the fact that you haven't actually invoked it consciously, whereas certain types of meditations can actually invoke that, and it will just come about, because there are certain proven practices that it actually works for, you know. It's not just a feeling. I don't like to use that word feeling, because it's non-dualism is not a feeling. It's ultimately it's attributeless. There's no attributes involved in it. There's ultimately voidism or all inclusiveness, or whichever side of the scale you want to say. But it's I suppose what I'm trying to get at is just saying it as non-dualism. It kind of paints it as just a very bleak, well, not bleak, but a very difficult, far away goal to be somehow seeked. And us as human beings, how do we seek that? How do we get that? What sort of methods are there in place? That's my question out to everybody. I don't know, just to ask my
Walter.
Excuse me. Joe raised her hand.
Hi, yeah.
Hi, Joe.
This is a synchronicity. It's played straight into my question, which I'm very curious about this, because as Amar was speaking, I've come across somebody who, through his spiritual teacher and many years of whatever processes and he went through and whatnot, which ended up in very, very intense meditations, he has spoken to me about his experience of non-duality, oneness, all of that. And I'm curious about this because it's not been my experience, as I think you know, Dawn has just mentioned as well. Mine was completely spontaneous, never meditated in my life, didn't know anything about Hare Krishna, didn't do any mantras, nothing, and just wham, just got it. And I've said before, it was through a process of pain and suffering in my life for many, many, many years that I went through, and all of a sudden had this awakening experience. And you know, which is always there, you know, 4 years later, to some degree. That's a state that I live in, you know, change of consciousness, the open heart, it completely different to how I was before. You know, the consequences of that, you know, there's no loneliness, there's no sense of not belonging, you know, lots of benefits and beautifulness to it, as I've spoken about before. But yeah, these meditations that that when people are going through that or seeking that and practicing to get an experience of non-duality or oneness or awakening of some sort, do they last? Are they there always? Are they in that altered state? Or is it just whilst they are meditating? Because this chap that I've talked to, he then seems to go back to his life, and there's no difference, seems to me. And it's a completely different experience to how I'm experiencing it. So yeah, it's just curious if you understood what I'm saying. And since Amar's talked about it, Dawn, can you shed some light on
what do you mean?
that?
Like, so when this guy's meditating, when he comes out of it, like he's in this sort of non-dual state, like, and then he comes out of it. Yeah. I think that's quite common. To be honest, my experience is, you know, there's more absorption when I'm not meditating than when I am. Like, to be honest.
Yes, exactly. You're kind of living it, aren't you? You're not coming in and out of it. And it seems a little bit of what Amar was talking about, you know, and I wasn't seeking any of that, and I don't do that now. That isn't, I just live and breathe it, and, you know, okay, I can ground myself more when I totally need to, but that is just solitude and grounding. You know, but I'm certainly not meditating to achieve an altered state of any sort. And that's what I'm curious about. Is that just a shift in consciousness when people are doing that, when they experience that non-duality and oneness in that meditation process? Is it a shift in consciousness, or is it a true opening of the heart and a shift in it? And does it last?
I mean, I know a lot of people say, you know, the sense of a person is still there or whatever during that experience. I mean, I wouldn't know. I never had, you know, glimpses or anything through meditation. Like I say, when my eyes are open, there's more depth, you know, like to this. And although I do use, sometimes when I'm on the verge of sleep, if I focus on just, you know, my eyes closed and focus on the kind of light inside, like I'll start to raise my kundalini that way. Like I'll start to get flashes of light and stuff, which is actually quite fun. So yeah, in a way I am seeking an altered state in a sense, but more that kind of kundalini stuff. So it's kind of good fun.
Okay, so it is, it's just that because I'm still learning and curious about this, I'm wondering, okay, what does it mean for other people? What does awakening mean? What does non-duality mean? What does, you know, an altered state mean? And are they living? I mean, obviously there are people who are very highly in an altered state or living non-duality, clearly, because you've interviewed people who are living in that way. It's not coming and going, you know, they're just in that living in that state, aren't they?
Yeah, which becomes more normal, like you say, over time. It just becomes more subdued, you know, like you just get on with life, don't you? So, you know.
Yeah, but it has changed because, like I said, that the effect of not feeling loneliness anymore, which I felt all my life. I felt lonely all of my life, excruciatingly lonely. It's completely gone. I don't feel lonely. There is no loneliness.
Yeah, I get that. Which doesn't mean to say you don't get an urge to see someone, right? It's a very different.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
You can
yes,
certainly get
absolutely.
that, you know?
But it's completely different. Oh yeah, I wouldn't keep myself holed up for months at a time.
But well, I could be actually. Sometimes I feel like I could.
No, I haven't become a hermit. I'm still quite sociable. I always was.
Right.
But yeah, but I'm saying that that's it's a massive change for me. It's a massive change in my life and how I've always been. And that's that's from after the awakening.
But it doesn't help with the patterns, does it? Right? Because I know your story, and the same here. Do you know, it's one of those things as well. It's, you know, people think it's the soul's all suffering and stuff as well, and it doesn't, you know. But
we still suffer. There is still suffering, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes even deeper, because it's, you know, it's felt more almost, but I also feel it's also more understood. There's a bigger picture. There's just something that I can accept more easily than I could before.
I suffer less. I mean, I know everybody says I suffer more. I think I suffer less. I think I suffered quite a lot before, so maybe it's
yeah.
just
not competing here, Dawn. It's all relative.
Well, it depends. I do have my moments.
Yes. Yeah. But also that, and the other big change with me is that sense of belonging. Sense of belonging that I've always had all of my life. never belonged anywhere.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
That one.
that has, for me, that has gone.
Was it
I just
massive
don't.
with you then? Like, were you a real outsider?
Yes,
That's a real
yes,
curse. I
yes,
had that as well.
yes. My
No,
entire life, even from childhood,
yeah,
I've looked and I've always wanted to belong, but I never belonged. You know, whether it was childhood, university, jobs, whatever, there was just no belonging. I just felt like I wasn't connecting. I wasn't. There was something always missing, and so
that's
that
really
whole
painful. That, yeah. I didn't get it. I'd be, you know, my first year at school, I'd be just watching these people at playground, on the playground at lunchtime, just congregating and playing, and I'd just be like, "What are they doing? Why do they do that?" You know, like baffled. You know. So yeah, I found it really difficult.
Mm. But they're just, I mean, you know, big changes within me, and they haven't come back. You know, my awakening happened 4 years ago, and I'm still happily in that kind of great. You know, I like solitude. I don't need to think, oh, do I need to join this group, that group, whatever. I don't have that urgency or that need anymore. So it's a real positive. It's, you know, for
Yeah,
me.
I know, I get that. What about you, Walter?
What is, sorry.
Were you an outsider, Walter?
Excited about what?
Were you an outsider? An outsider?
An outsider.
No belonging?
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm,
Mm.
mm.
So, anyway.
We have a question for Dawn in the chat. It says, when you are seeking an altered state when going to sleep, Kundalini, who is doing that?
I am. I'm doing that when I'm going to sleep. Who else? It's not. That's a non-dual tricky question. Yeah, yeah. When I'm just, as you go to sleep, as everyone goes to sleep. Yeah, just that's yeah. You can say no one if you want, but like, you know, who's seeking that? I don't know if I'm exactly seeking that either, but I'm kind of wanting that. It's not really seeking that. I mean, I like that when it happens, but it, you know, so.
That's from the Headless Way.
All right, okay. You know the answer, like, to that. I just, yeah, I guess there's part of me rebels against it, like, fuck off. I mean, you know, it's just, life is normal, you know, like, yeah, because it's not like there's no one here in a sense. In one sense, life is lived normally, but the physical's gone here and the boundary's gone, but it's, you know, it's personal as well as impersonal. So, you know, you might disagree with that. That's how I experience it. So, you know, I'd rather.
Chris D. Luna raised his hand. Come on
Yeah.
in.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I'm just a bit confused about what people are saying. I mean, has nobody heard that, you know, the axiom, you know, I am not the body, I'm not even the mind, when it comes to non-duality, Advaita. I mean, all these discussions about meditation and bringing in other things, bringing in experiences in meditation, they're all objects, that they have no reality, because we are just pure consciousness. We are pure consciousness that is aware which is made aware by its interaction with the physical, with the material world. And that's the way that I see. That's the way that consciousness expands and learns and grows, by working through the physical body and the five elements within the body, to the experience. I mean, you talk about suffering. Suffering is interesting in the sense that once you get non-duality, you realize that things will happen. The body, the physical body is going to die. It's going to, you're born, you live, and then you get old, die, and that's the way it is. You know, this body is just on a lease. Some people have got a long lease, some people have got a short lease, but it's just something we're renting, and it is just a manifestation of an appearance through cosmic consciousness. I mean, I don't really know how to keep going on about it. I mean, it's coming back to suffering. I mean, there is no suffering in the end. If you look at the various Advaita non-dual masters, a lot of them, you know, had the Ramana particularly. He died of cancer of the throat, and also Nisargadatta also had cancer of the throat. And they, you know, when people said, "Aren't you in pain?" and they both said, "Well, the body's in pain, but you know, I realise I am not the body, and I'm not even the mind." And so, the suffering is just an object that's experienced in the physical world. So,
but you're just mentioning
you bang your toe or something, and you go, "Oh, that hurts," but you know, you realise it's just in the body, and you pay it no more attention. So, I mean,
just because Nisargadatta
Walter was talking about, was describing that when I came in, non-duality, which reminded me of the way Tony Parsons speaks. I don't know if you're all aware of Tony Parsons. Yes, no, I don't know.
Just because Nisargadatta and Ramana Maharshi said that, I mean, it doesn't mean to say that someone can have cancer and it scare the shit out of them if they're awake or not awake, and be painful as hell. So, you know, you're taking it like their word is gospel. I mean, I just don't have that. I mean, and also when you hear that, there's a tendency to minimize then your own suffering. Like, sometimes things are scary as hell, and sometimes they're not. It can take me by surprise.
That's because you identify. You identify.
That's your opinion. You don't know whether I identify. You can't define me. You don't know whether I identify with it or not. And yes,
well, I can from the teachings. You know, the traditional.
Whether they are the teachings, so. I'm talking from my own experience. Whether you think I'm awake or not, that's your, you know.
Well,
it's so this is real and unreal. I mean, there are objects. You know, there's some very nice objects like food, like people I like, and et cetera, and so I mean, life just continues. It's experienced differently for sure, but you know, for me, you know, I don't have that. I don't want that. I wouldn't want to not be able to suffer and feel, and you know, sometimes I would, but sometimes I wouldn't. You know, I don't think it's that like set in stone, to be honest. Like, it's just, I don't know. What do you think, Walter?
Chris, so what is the question, Chris? I think you started off by saying you don't understand what we're saying or something.
There seems to be a lack of basic knowledge about what Advaita or non-duality actually is.
Oh, so you're saying Don and I have a lack of knowledge of Advaita Vedanta.
Well, you know, I'm not here to insult.
No, I just want to know what I'm responding. What am I responding to? Can you, when things go on too long, I lose the plot. I don't know what we're talking about.
But nobody seems to have been studying, you know, the teachings, the ancient Advaita teachings, and looking at modern. I don't like the term masters, but masters like Nisargadatta and Ramana Maharshi. You know, because most of the comments I've heard are people. It seems that people are still identifying with themselves as the body, and not a part of the, we're not in part of the cosmic consciousness.
Okay, so if I can summarize, you're saying I sound like I'm identified with my body.
Well, I don't. Well, I don't know because I haven't heard you speaking. Whether you do that or not.
I just don't.
You might have moved beyond that. You might have practiced samadhi.
I'm not claiming anything. I'm just trying to understand what your question is.
I mean, my question is,
Can you say it succinctly? Is that the word?
Huh?
Concise. Can you put it in a? Can you frame it a little briefly for me?
People's impression of what duality, non-duality is, seems to be confused because I don't know if they've been listening to too many modern teachers of non-duality, like Tony Parsons and the various other people of his style of his version of non-duality.
Is that just a commentary
about the real history of non-duality, the various schools?
So it's just a commentary.
Well, what I said was a commentary, yeah.
Yeah, so you don't really have a question.
No, forget it. No,
okay.
Forget it.
All right, thanks, Chris.
So I'm not too sure what the point of this, you know.
Well, this is sort of if you have a question, you raise your hand. But I can't find one in what you're saying.
So where did you get your source for learning about non-duality from?
I'm not teaching non-duality here.
Yeah, well, your view of non-duality. You must have there must have been a source for it.
I don't think so.
You didn't have a source. You didn't find a book, or you didn't hear somebody speaking about it. I thought this is interesting, or this is.
I mean, what I speak about is sort of what was revealed here, I guess you could say, or what was seen, what was uncovered. You know.
I don't understand. Don't understand what you're saying.
Well, I guess it's the difference between, you can starve to death reading a cookbook. So you can study Ramana and all that stuff, but, I don't know. I wouldn't call it direct experience because there's no one here to have a direct experience. It's just what is. It's just this. There's no one separate from anything called a direct experience. There's no one apart from what is. And studying books is also what is, but this isn't an intellectual exercise that I'm talking about. You sound like you want to educate me on
I don't know.
the traditions.
Well,
this isn't about a tradition or a lineage or following a teaching. This is just what seems to be happening.
Yeah, I think you're just making it. I just think you're confusing people.
I'm not confusing people. It's what seems to be happening.
seems to be happening.
Yeah.
Isn't it the constant flow of universal consciousness flowing through?
That sounds like a lot of fancy words. I'm just.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry.
I don't know. You sounds like you want
to.
You want to give a seminar on something. I mean, if you want the floor, and we'll all listen. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah.
I think it's all confusing, isn't it? Whether you use traditional text or not. I mean, this stuff just, messes up your brain. But,
I think Chris has left now.
Jo has her hand raised.
Although, no, I was just going to respond to Chris by saying I didn't read anything. I have no idea about the teachings, and that, yeah, for me, I do talk about it as an experience because that is the way I might relate it to other people. So, yeah, I think that was it was confusing because it isn't a theoretical thing. It isn't something you can read about. It is just something that happens, that experiences. I know you talk about it in a different way, Walter, but that is how I would explain it to somebody who was trying to understand it. Anyway, that was it.
But you read quite a bit, Walter, didn't you? I mean, everybody watches YouTube videos. If they don't do it beforehand, they watch or they read something afterwards, don't they? I mean, generally. I think.
Yeah, but not before. What I'm saying is I didn't go through, Vedanta teachings.
Yeah,
I didn't know
I
anything about them. I didn't read the Bhagavad Gita. I didn't know anything about spirituality.
It's great. That's great.
Yeah.
No,
yeah. But I think the point that Chris was making was that there seemed to be, for him, we weren't talking in the ways that these books and teachers
yeah.
are talking about. And I think that was the point he was making. So he was confused with what this group is about, because really, well, for me, I'm here because of an experience that I had, and I'm learning more, and I'm curious with others and their experiences. That's my, So anyway,
at least you can kind of, that experience isn't so conditioned, is it? So it came out of the blue and you hadn't read anything. I mean, that's great in a way. Like that's, I think that's a bonus, isn't it, to talk about this?
Absolutely, because it is, and when I think you probably caught the conversation about suffering, but very often, Eckhart Tolle talks about suffering. There's a lot of spiritual teachers that talk about suffering, and unfortunately, that is the way that some of us gain awakening, non-duality. That is the path. So anyway, he's left the group.
So plenty of people suffer. It doesn't happen though.
For sure. And there are other ways, which is what I'm curious about. And there are plenty of, and it wasn't just suffering. It wasn't just out of the blue. It was a journey of self-awareness because of my suffering, because it just had to come to a standstill. And, self-awareness is key, absolutely key.
Well, what happened prior to it? Like, was there any kind of defining moment for you, or,
looking back now, I can see I had almost epiphanies. There were one or two really big ones in my life, which when I look back now, I see, where did that come from? I also had one about 4 years before my awakening, a massive big one that just came. It was actually what I would call is a huge feeling of just love for somebody that was totally wrong for me. And I just could not shake it. I could not shake it. My mind was saying, you're crazy. You can't be with this man. Absolutely insane. You cannot be back with him. And yet I was so completely in love with this person again, totally in a new way, totally overwhelming way. You know, it was unbelievable.
So
I
like a
didn't know where it came from.
transpersonal experience, like a proper energetic sort of thing,
Yes,
not
yes,
natural.
for
Okay.
sure. For sure, but I didn't realize it at the time. All I know is it was crazy. And so I had that, and I only make sense of it. I got back together with this guy, and I only made sense of it because it was only really, when I say there was more suffering to come, but it was only through that and that relationship that took me deeper and deeper into my own self-awareness, into my own inner journey. And ultimately, you know, my awakening occurred. And now the only way I explain it is that I had to go through that to finally get. And also, you know, it's almost like the heart opening was almost happening before my awakening. That was part of the process. That
Was
the
it for
love that I was giving was part of my journey. It was part of the process, even though it was insane.
But was it 4 years? I mean, was it like, were you with him for 4 years or
Yes,
not?
yes, yes.
Wow.
I stayed with him. I
That's
stayed
the
with
whole
him.
time, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
But when what I'm saying is what I experienced in those years was then, because I had this overwhelming love for him, the relationship completely changed because I was already changing with my understanding of, okay, well, you know, I can accept that. All right, things are going, I'm different, things are going to, and of course, he changed slightly. The relationship changed. And it's my experience of it. It's textbook. It's the chapter of love
How
in
did you
most of
meet
those
him?
spiritual books. You
Can I
know,
ask?
Eckhart Tolle talks about it. It's all in there. And so that was my experience.
How did you get out of that though?
How did I?
Yeah, how did you, you know, extricate yourself from that relationship though? Because obviously you had to, right? Or are you still?
No, stayed in
Oh, right,
it.
okay,
Stayed.
that's the one you're still. Okay,
Had,
okay.
yeah, I had my awakening. I had my awakening, and actually we did split up 2 years later, only because we were going in very different directions. I could not live in the way that was being asked for me to live in that relationship anymore. So yeah, we did split up, but even so, I do think that was part of my journey to the heart awakening.
Can I ask
It's
how
all
long you split up for? How long did you separate from?
We've been separate for 2 years, but we're just about very good friends again now.
Oh, okay.
And again, that's only again because of my experience and because of there is no animosity. Obviously, there's no anger. There's no, you know, it's just okay. Physically, I don't need to be married. There is no marriage. There's no divorce. To me, love is love. But in the way that I needed to expand and live and be my own way, to be allowed to be was not possible within that relationship. So it did end, but we are, again, bizarrely, the best of friends.
All right, okay. Maybe that distance has changed. It can do if someone's a bit toxic, can't it? It can change the dynamic a bit if they're a little bit more distant.
Yeah. But there'll be no question of us getting back together again because he is still very much different, and I'm on my own separate journey now. But it doesn't change the relationships around me, the ripple effect of how I was changing and continued after my awakening. The ripple effect of that in all of my relationships has been phenomenal. Absolutely.
No, yeah. Some people just go away, just quite by themselves.
Yeah. No, not for me. I've continued to, and again, there's still pain and suffering in that. But for me, you know, there was a persistence there. There's not in a proactive working at it way, but just a kind of, how can I put it? It's almost like, well, yeah, it really is from the heart. That's what I feel.
You're talking very differently than you did the last time, but just I mean, I suppose because you were talking more about sort of being stuck in something, and I suppose.
Yeah, I was 2 months ago. That was the challenge I had.
Okay.
But as I say, I did do that more grounding work, and I kind of feel like I've found my way again. Sounds, I know it sounds strange, but as you've said, you know, we can sometimes, it's hard to explain, isn't it? It's always there, but we can get caught up in life,
Yeah.
can't we? And
Yeah,
then,
definitely.
and then when the challenges come, it's almost like, I'm going to draw upon it. I need it stronger. I need it more. I need to call it in. I need to be more from the heart. I need to, you know, yeah. But it's weird. It's always underlying though. It's always there. We might have to have a one-to-one at some point, Dawn, I think.
Yeah. No, you've got me really curious as well, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'll message you.
Okay. Cool.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you, Joe. Amar has his hand raised.
Hi, thank you, Walter. Sorry, I feel like I'm rambling a little bit here. It's my first time as well, so I just feel, yeah, this is a really good group, actually. I just want to thank you all. This has been really good. Actually, listening to yours, I feel like I'm on the right group. But Joe, I just want to say I definitely resonate you to a large degree. That I don't feel you know, that sort of pain or suffering the same sort of way. I know with what you mentioned, I think before Chris was talking, I think you asked a question, and I think you kind of touched on that question as well towards the end of what you just said just now, as to whether something's always there, whether there is always that experience, whether that experience is always there or something, or is it, you know, does it shift or anything? So from what I've gathered, then again, it's been my first time I've joined this meeting. It seems like it's that people are talking from their own sort of personal experiences. So from my personal experience, to maybe to help gauge some kind of understanding of this, is for me, yeah, it is always there. You know, this whatever you want to call it, whether it be non-dual, you know, this non-duality, this feeling of elation, you know, that there is just this absolute peace, however it wants to be interpreted. You know, give it so many different names. I think certainly from my experience, it's always there. It's just that our, you know, whether it be our history, our conditioning, or whatever it is, you know, that finite nature, whatever you want to call it, it sometimes is that which actually acts as a, I'm struggling for words trying to figure this out, but maybe something like a thin veil, some kind of some kind of opaque filter, of which, you know, could be perceived maybe as ignorance of that vision of the, you know, of non-duality, of that bliss nature. So it's, how can I, it's almost like the sky, it's always there, but we, our very what we're made of is kind of like clouds, and they kind of shift here and there, only revealing now and then what our true nature is, which is the sky, and hence giving us those moments of feeling bliss, and really no longer these needings, you know, of loneliness or anything like that, or something to satiate. So I don't think that I don't think it's the sky that's shifting, but rather the clouds, and being stuck in those clouds. Obviously, we then start giving ourselves all these masks that we put on ourselves, and identifications, etc. And it is difficult, you know, to kind of shrug them off, I suppose. But it's kind of like it's a process, isn't it? So, but it's our own minds at times that act as that veil. And at least I would like to think that of it as that way, and almost being lost in a forest or something. When I guess when we walk a path through that forest, to get to be able to see a clear blue sky, it's obviously quite a long, arduous journey for many of us from various different backgrounds. However, I think when walking that path, many a times, again, this is my experience, I find that the path, the journey becomes a little bit more familiar over time, and it becomes a little bit easier to find our way to dualism, and does help. I don't know if anyone else resonates this, or if this is in line with any of this. And just one of the last things I wanted to mention as well, maybe going on to what Chris was saying, is that, oh, how come no one's talking about this this person or this person? But the fact is, these people that he mentioned, their focus wasn't just non-dualism, but it was actually a level of compassion. A large amount of it was compassion, and it was actually compassion for all of humanity, to actually help people out of these clouds. Otherwise, it's a painful experience. You can't just say, well, all your pain and suffering is just a load of rubbish, because actually you are not the body, you're the mind. But that doesn't really help. That's actually caused more damage than anything else. It's for those who have realized they are at least have some kind of responsibility to be to help those through this forest, really, and come to.
Well, do you any comments?
Yeah, sorry, I'll stop now.
No, sorry.
Anybody else have a question?
By the way, Hamish wasn't able to make it tonight. Just put that out there. I just heard from him. So
next time,
yeah. I said he could come on if but I don't think he's going to.
Okay. There's a question, but I don't really understand it. It says, is it compassionate to deal with the dramas of the ego?
Compassionate to deal with them? Deal with the dramas? Yeah, it's not really clear, is it? Sounds like you've got issues. Is it compassionate to deal with them? Compassionate to yourself, maybe. Well, they're your dramas, aren't they? The ego is the self, really, isn't it? So yeah, it probably is. But you say dramas, so it sounds like makes me think of intrigue or some kind of fascination or something. I don't know, rather than issues. So I don't know. Or diminution, dramas. I suppose that's a kind of minimization of what's going on, maybe as well. So rather than maybe not taking yourself seriously, maybe you've heard this message and you're sort of thinking, it's only drama, it's drama of ego, it's not my issues or my problems or my suffering, something like that. That can go on. So it's compassionate, and maybe not the word that springs to mind. It's just, it makes sense, and it's, yeah, it's a good thing to do. Oh, and you recognize that, so you're obviously self-aware, so, which is halfway there, isn't it? if you're aware of what the problem is, you know, it's good to talk about it or whatever.
Somebody wrote, where is compassion felt?
Compassion is a feeling. Well, compassion is like, it's an action, isn't it? It's not just like empathy, it's actually doing something. So, you know, your friend is sick, you bring them a casserole, that's compassionate. I don't know, like you're moved. It's not just passive. So you're moved to act, I suppose. You're moved to do something about something. You're engaged in some way. It's, you know, empathy can be like that too. I mean, in the action of, you know, feeling what the other person's feeling, but it's different, you know. And not everybody has empathy, but I don't know. Does everybody have compassion? Probably not. No, like, but yeah, that's supposed to be a big part of awakening. Is one of the qualities, isn't it? Is compassion. Is it? I don't know. Like, I'm not sure, but I think on the whole it probably is. And there's definitely, on the whole, there's more empathy for most people, like I would imagine, because, you know, because there isn't that boundary, there isn't that barrier. You see the other in yourself. You know, there's no difference there. There's no essential difference. The same essence. So that's unconditional love. So there's more of a movement. There's less self-obsession. There's more of a movement outwards than there was before, probably. And maybe for some people who are too much giving, it might be taking a little bit back, a bit more compassion for self, a bit more self-love, maybe. Some kind of balance, isn't it? Go to sleep for bed.
Well, if there's no other questions, we could end a little early.
Joe, have you got more?
I'm racking my brain. I'm trying to think of a question, but no, I'm all questioned out. I was leaving the floor for everybody else.
All right. Okay. It's really hard to manufacture questions, isn't it? To make them up. Yeah. I would if I could, but I can't think of any myself. So I don't know.
Yeah, because I think it's easier if we're actually experiencing something with this kind of group. It would be nice if somebody's having a particular kind of experience, you know, and the questions, and that's where I've come from previously, and it's been quite good to do that. Not just the curiosity of non-duality or awakening, but, you know, actual questions. I guess we've had a bit of that tonight.
What you mean on like actual in the midst of an awakening, you mean, or like?
No, just real life, you know, in integrating it, the difficulties we have. We might have a situation that's, okay, you know, what do you think of this? How am I, you know, and I've done that in the past where it's been like, oh, I'm not quite sure, you know, should I, you know, an actual real life situation.
Yeah, they're much more interesting too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So maybe
I don't know why people don't bring that. They do Eckhart Tolle, but they bring a specific type of question, don't
exactly.
they?
Exactly. And actually, what I'm finding online, when I have done a little bit of that in the last month, what I've realized is I'm drawn to the Q&As. I'm drawn to whether it's Eckhart Tolle, somebody, you know, from the past or whatever. The Q&As are so so important and brings in more depth, you know, into everybody's understanding. Because actually, what this is about is it's not just about learning theoretically, or you know, the curiosity of it, or what does it feel like, or you know, it's actually about, okay, how is it different in our lives? What's the difference you know, we're making, or it's making, or how are we living? And you know, it's a bit like Amal was saying about the compassion. That journey of self-awareness is about compassion and also it's about understanding, you know, and that's, it's all, for me, it's all key. So it's the psychological sort of stuff that was coming up before my journey, what I call the inner journey, is so very, very relevant. And that's why the Q&As are so interesting for me.
I get that. And yeah, because I mean, because what else is there? I mean, in introduction, I mean, that's all by rote stuff, isn't it, for the main part? Like, and that the rest brings, you know, the Q&A brings in creativity, and it's, like you say, real questions, real life, because that's the stuff we're interested in, isn't it? I mean, that's the stuff I'm interested in, you know, because it gives you permission as well to feel what you feel and to struggle with what you struggle with, because I think there's so much conditioning around this stuff. And I mean, it doesn't promote it in itself, but it's just the way it's absorbed somehow. Like, so I think, you know, it's good to hear that speakers go through shit and other people like yourself get stuck. We get stuck in stuff, and it doesn't help you free yourself. I mean, it's a funny thing because it's always, you know, seen as like therapy is making the prison more comfortable, like in after awakening, but you can get stuck in all sorts of prisons after awakening, man. You can, like, and you know, navigating that. This doesn't necessarily help you with that. You can get stuck, and you know, and you know, it can go very, very deep. Why you are, like, I don't know.
Exactly. And that's the angle that I come from in my interest. And when I'm, you know, there was something that I was listening to on Saturday, and actually it's the partner that Eckhart Tolle has. She was talking, and it was so interesting because I thought, wow, I've never come across this before. And so the way she was talking and how their relationship was at the beginning, and how, you know, they also go through stuff, just goes to prove even somebody like Eckhart Tolle, you know, he's still got the everyday life and living to do. He's got to put out the bins, and, you know, she's fed up with him not doing it, all that kind of stuff. You know, and that,
I thought they lived I thought they had separate houses.
That's probably. Yeah, which is called, apparently it's called LAT, you know, living apart together. That's a term I hadn't come across. I've only come across that recently. But what's interesting about this is that, these spiritual teachers, what you know, how are they living? It's not all, you know, it's not all perfect. It's not all, you know, it's angels and we're all martyrs and all that kind of stuff. It's not at all, because we're still trying to negotiate life. We're still going through and, you know, having to do everyday living. But that's what, for me, that's, you know, that's the consciousness part of it. How are we negotiating within ourselves? Oh, thank you. You know, that's the interesting part, because when I run a small group, but I also do one-to-one work. It's very casually, but you know, the interesting thing about that is we're talking about everyday life. Okay, so this has come up. So how do we negotiate this situation that you're in? And it's not about almost giving answers to people, but it's certainly, you know, making them more aware of the angles that they're coming from, where those choices, what part of you does that come from? And that's the interesting bit, because the journey of self-awareness is, whether you want to call it therapy, whatever you want to call it, is understanding ourselves better so that we can understand others better. It's not a conscious effort to do that, but that is the process that we go through. And that's where I think then, compassion, empathy, relationships, all of this kind of starts slotting into place. And that's the fascinating journey, isn't it? That's the journey of consciousness, as I call it. Whether we're awakened or not, that's part of what can happen beforehand. Not for everybody, but that's certainly the way that, I've come through.
Well, yeah, first of all, I didn't realize Kim Eng and Eckhart talk about their problems, or anything but I didn't know you ran a group. That's cool.
Well, yeah. Just because, well, who else can I talk to about this stuff?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, imagine that. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, some of the psychotherapy stuff that gets attached to non-duality can be a bit watered down too, can't it? Do you know, like this sort of spiritual therapy stuff? It's like, also it's very kind of usually presented a very passive way, feeling the feelings. I mean, not a kind of interpersonal. I'm much more in favor of interpersonal healing, like just whether it's friends or therapists or whatever, like speaking, bit of yang, because the sitting with the emotions and stuff, I mean, that's all yin. It's got to be a bit of both, isn't it? Yin and yang. And
a little bit, in my experience, a little bit of both. A lot of the just sitting with them, that's for sure. And again, that was because of my circumstances, but it sure did take me a long way, actually. It can't just be that. It can't just be that. So there is always an element, I suppose. I had a good friend, and we would walk along the canals and have long talks. And because she was very much on the self-development journey herself and had been for 20, 30 years, very interesting to talk to somebody, because it's the way that we talk about these things. It's the way that we interact with each other, and where we can just talk honestly, openly, ask questions. There's no answers sometimes, but it's almost bringing our own self-realizations in by being able to talk openly to somebody else, by voicing what we want to voice that's inside us, or even our pain, our questions, our intrigue, whatever, trying to understand the other person. That all of that interaction and dialogue and conversation is so important. But yeah, I mean, obviously a good therapist will take you through that. Not all of us can afford it, but certainly a little bit of inner awareness, noticing the feelings is a massive way forward.
But like you said, the friend or whatever, like, I mean, a lot of therapy finishes, doesn't it, when you find a friend or someone to confide in. I mean, people talks about that, and I think it's true, but it's something about accurate mirroring, someone who's not distorting your reality, particularly if you've been in something toxic. It's just incredibly powerful. You're being heard in a real way and reflected back, and oh my God, that heals. It really does.
Yes, it does, definitely. Yeah.
But that final push, I mean, that's the greatest. It's like, very often when it comes to change, can just come out of the blue, can't it? Like, just with some of that, like, transpersonal, you said about that going, back with your ex or whatever, like some powerful urge. And I think that's very much like in line with the Kundalini stuff. It can just rise out of nowhere and just drive you in a direction you didn't even think of. And it's like, you can't argue.
Unbelievable. And it's not something that you can actually explain, because it was so insane even to myself. And I'm sure, people around me was like, what the hell is going on with it? But because I was thinking myself, but this feeling just would not shift. And it was such a strong feeling, lasted for a month, 5 weeks. I just couldn't shake it.
Yeah.
I was literally in despair, as if I was like a 16-year-old in my first heartbreak. It was incredible. It was just so strong. But again, I would say that, being aware of even those strength of feelings, which I know now were, yeah, I've always felt very, very strongly. I've always had what I would call large feelings, and it's difficult for us to compare to others. You know, what I might feel as heartbreak or another, or anger or whatever the emotion is. We can't compare that really, can we? How can we? But again, I realize now that, and this is why, yeah, we're all perfect. Exactly as we are, is as we're meant to be, because that's our path. That is our very own individual path, and one way or another, we will go where we're meant to go. I try to believe that.
Yeah, but change is a kind of miracle, like as we're saying, like, when those urges do come, and sometimes they take you in a direction you haven't thought of, and it is incredibly powerful, like you say, and it's really
and also, actually, I'll tell you what's key is that I've always been a very sensible, logical person. My entire life has been, university, career, everything, very much what I would call head driven, head in the head driven, sensible, logical, practical, routine, the lot. And those big occasions, I've had two of those in terms of feelings. I went completely with those feelings instead of pushing them to one side and then going with my head. Because if I'd have gone with my head, I wouldn't have gone back with him.
Right.
That's what my head was saying, but the whole of my heart could actually not. I mean, it sounds insane. I mean, I'm not some romantic fool. Yeah, but honestly, yeah, I didn't go with my head. And one of the reasons I give that story to people when I'm talking openly is because I see that as my intuitive side coming through, which I didn't allow to come through usually throughout my life because I was so logical. But that's the strength of feelings was hard to ignore anyway. But yeah, it was intuitive, and I absolutely was meant. I mean, now I think, thank God I went back with him. Thank God I went through all of that. That I went.
Crazy.
Sounds insane. But of course, because otherwise I would not have had that beautiful awakening that I had.
Yeah. No, I get it. But I mean, you don't necessarily get in touch with your intuition, or you can still block it out after awakening, for sure. I mean, I did to a certain extent, no.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God I don't. But it's very humbling, that as well, because you can look back and go, oh my God, I was so wrong-headed and didn't know what I was doing, really. And maybe I still don't, but in a different way, in a better way, right? So
yeah. It's all very interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm curious what you studied, but you don't have to say.
No, I was completely. I studied IT.
Right. Okay. All right. Very
totally logical, mathematical, statistics. All of that was my childhood, and schooling and everything.
Right,
That's why this stuff is just so amazing. That this is where I am in my life now. Yeah.
Wow.
If you'd have, incredible. Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, must overwhelm all that. If you're left kind of hemisphere dominant, isn't it? You're really into thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Walter's probably switched off again. It was too long.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Oh no.
Thank you.
Just want to thank everybody for coming. And you got anything to plug, Dawn?
No, I actually haven't even arranged my next meeting. I've been procrastinating, so I better get on to that. But check the meetup. There'll be something on there soon, and so hopefully.
Yeah, we'll do another one of these next month.
Cool.
Let's see if I can find my next. Okay. So yeah, the second. Andrew Hewson will be on at 2:00 p.m. Eastern time. So if you want to tune in for that, you're welcome to do so. Thank you, everybody, for being here today, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Well,
Goodbye.
Yeah.
thank you. Bye.